My sister left her baby on my porch with a note reading "He's yours now," then disappeared abroad. A year later she returned smiling like nothing happened and tried to take him back. She had no idea I'd documented absolutely everything. The doorbell screamed at 2:47 a.m. on a Tuesday morning, ripping me from a dead sleep. My heart slammed against my ribs as I checked my phone, convinced there was an emergency or someone had the wrong address. But when I opened the door, a chilling silence met me. No one stood on my porch. Just a car seat, a tiny, sleeping baby inside, and a folded piece of notebook paper tucked under the handle. My hands shook so violently I could barely pick up the note. The looping letters were unmistakable. Harper. My sister. The note was 17 words. "Claire, he's yours now. I can't do this anymore. His name is Liam. Don't try to find me." 17 words that shattered my carefully constructed life into a million pieces. I stared down at the little bundle in the carrier. He couldn't have been more than 3 months old, wearing a onesie that had seen better days, wrapped in a thin blanket against the cold Portland drizzle. His tiny fists were curled near his face, making soft snuffling sounds as he slept. My first instinct was to call the police. My second, my parents. But I didn't. I knew the consequences. Harper would disappear into the system, Liam would end up in foster care, and our family would fracture beyond repair. So, I picked up the car seat, brought it inside, and watched this stranger's child sleep on my living room floor, trying to process the impossible. The sun came up, and Liam woke up screaming. I had no formula, no diapers, no bottles. Nothing. Still in my pajamas, I drove to the 24-hour Target and bought everything the packaging told me a baby needed. The cashier offered a knowing smile, as if I were just another exhausted new mom. I didn't correct her. Harper had always been the chaotic one. While I pursued my nursing degree, she dropped out of community college after a semester. While I worked steadily at Portland Community Hospital, she bounced between bartending and retail, nothing ever lasting more than a few months. Our parents, bless their hearts, had enabled her for years, always providing money, always letting her move back home when a relationship or living situation inevitably fell apart. I tried to be supportive, I really did. But there's only so many times you can listen to someone complain about their problems while refusing to lift a finger to fix them. The last time I'd seen her was Christmas, 4 months before Liam appeared. She'd seemed off. Baggy clothes, leaving the room whenever someone tried to take pictures. Now I understood why. She'd been pregnant and hadn't told anyone. That first week with Liam nearly broke me. I'd never wanted children. My life was perfectly structured around my work, my small circle of friends, and my one-bedroom apartment that barely fit me, let alone an infant. Suddenly, my days were measured in 3-hour feeding increments. Laundry was a constant, impossible mountain. I was operating on maybe 90 minutes of sleep a night. I called in sick. Then I burned through my vacation days. Then, at 3 a.m. one night, Liam cried in his borrowed crib and I had a full-blown panic attack in my bathroom. I knew I couldn't do this alone. My best friend, Chloe, came over that afternoon. She took one look at me and started making phone calls. Within 2 days, I had a family law attorney, Mark Jensen, sitting in my living room. He reviewed Harper's note. "You need to file for emergency custody immediately," he said. "Document everything. Every expense, every doctor's appointment, every sleepless night. Photos, receipts, dates, times. If your sister comes back, you need proof you've been his primary caregiver." "What if she doesn't come back?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Mark's expression was grim. "Then you'll petition for permanent guardianship or adoption. But that's a conversation for later. Right now, we need legal temporary custody so you're not technically harboring someone else's child without permission." The legal process moved surprisingly fast once I showed the judge Harper's note and explained the situation. Emergency custody was granted within 72 hours. With a stroke of a pen, I became Liam's legal guardian, though the judge made it clear it was temporary until Harper could be located and her parental rights addressed. I hired a private investigator, Thomas Reed, to find my sister. It took him less than a week to discover she'd boarded a flight to Bali 3 days after leaving Liam with me. Her social media accounts were deactivated, her phone number disconnected, her apartment abandoned with 2 months of unpaid rent. She'd planned this. Every detail orchestrated for her disappearance. My parents had to be told eventually. Mom cried for 3 hours straight when I brought Liam to their house. Dad just sat in his chair, staring at his grandson with a devastated expression that made my chest ache. How could she do this? Mom kept asking. How could she just leave him? I didn't have an answer. Harper had always been selfish, but this transcended anything I'd thought her capable of. You don't abandon a baby like he's an unwanted piece of furniture. You don't create a life and then just walk away because motherhood turned out to be hard. But she had, and now Liam was mine. The transition from aunt to mother happened gradually, then all at once. I learned his different cries, what each one meant. Hunger was distinct from tiredness, which was distinct from the general outrage of being a baby in a confusing world. I discovered he liked a certain bounce when he was fussy, calmed down with classical music, hated having his face wiped after eating but loved splashing in the bath. I moved to a larger apartment with an actual bedroom for him. I bought a crib instead of borrowing one, picked out curtains with little elephants, filled a bookshelf with bored books he was too young to appreciate but would grow into. Chloe threw me a surprise baby shower that made me cry because it felt like my friends were finally acknowledging Liam was mine now. Truly mine. Not just temporarily. Work was understanding, to a point. I'd exhausted my paid time off and had to arrange for reduced hours. Money became tighter than ever. Childcare cost more than my rent, and babies needed constant supplies. Formula, diapers, wipes, clothes he'd outgrow in weeks. The car seat Harper had left him in? It wasn't even properly installed, I discovered. It had been recalled 2 years prior for safety issues. Everything about how she'd left him spoke to negligence bordering on criminal. The more I uncovered, the angrier I became. I started documenting everything, just as Mark had advised. I created a binder with plastic sleeves holding every receipt, every photo, every piece of evidence showing I was Liam's mother in every way that mattered. Pictures of him at the pediatrician's, at the park, during his first attempts at solid foods when he made that disgusted face all babies make trying avocado. I saved every text message from friends and family acknowledging my role in his life. I wrote down dates, his first smile, rolling over, the day he giggled for the first time while I made silly faces. My phone's photo gallery became a timeline of his entire existence in my care. Morning routines, bedtime stories, trips to the grocery store where he'd grab everything within reach from the cart. Evidence that I loved him, was raising him, was his mother, even if I hadn't given birth to him. Chloe asked me once if I resented him. We were at a coffee shop, Liam napping in his stroller, and I'd just finished complaining about how exhausted I was. Sometimes, I admit it, I said. Not him, specifically, but the situation. I didn't choose this. It was forced on me, and that's hard to accept on the bad days. But you love him, she said. It wasn't a question. More than I thought possible. I reached down to adjust his blanket, feeling that fierce protectiveness that had become as natural as breathing. Which is why I'm terrified Harper will come back. Chloe squeezed my hand. She won't. People who abandon their kids don't come back. She was wrong. Liam's first birthday arrived on a sunny afternoon in June. I invited my parents, Chloe, a few friends from work who'd become surrogate aunts and uncles to him. We had cake and presents, and Liam smashed his face into a blue frosted cupcake with the enthusiasm only a 1-year-old can muster. I took approximately 200 photos, posted a few to my private Instagram with a long caption about how much this little boy had changed my life. That was my first mistake. 3 days later, Harper showed up at my door. I had just put Liam down for his afternoon nap and was finally sitting down with a cup of coffee when the doorbell rang. Through the peephole, I saw her standing on my porch, looking tanned and healthy, completely unbothered by the fact she'd abandoned her infant son over a year ago. Every muscle in my body went rigid. I considered not opening the door, but she'd already seen me through the window. No pretending I wasn't home. "Hey, Claire," Harper said brightly when I opened the door, as if we were old friends catching up instead of sisters with 15 months of abandonment between us. "Surprise, I'm back." I didn't move from the doorway. "What are you doing here? Can I come in? I've missed you so much." She tried to step forward, but I blocked her path. "Answer the question, Harper." Her smile faltered slightly. "I know you're probably mad about how I left things, but I can explain everything. I was going through such a hard time. I needed to find myself, you know? Bali was exactly what I needed. I did yoga teacher training, worked at a hostel in Ubud, really figured out who I am as a person." The words spilled out like rehearsed lines. Find herself. As if that justified what she'd done. "You abandoned your baby on my doorstep with a note," I said flatly. "In the middle of the night, without any supplies or warning or explanation." "I knew you'd take care of him," Harper said, and I noticed she didn't even use Liam's name. "You're so good at that stuff." And I was completely overwhelmed. Postpartum depression is real, Claire. I wasn't in the right headspace to be a mom. "So you ran away to Bali instead of getting help?" "I needed space to heal." She tried to look past me into the apartment. "Is he here? Is Liam here? I've been dreaming about seeing him again." Something cold settled in my stomach. "Why are you here, Harper?" "I want to see my son now." Her voice took on a petulant edge, the same tone she'd used as a teenager when our parents denied her something she wanted. "I'm his mother. You can't keep him from me. I'm his legal guardian. I have emergency custody." Her eyes widened in what might have been genuine surprise. "You got lawyers involved? Why would you do that?" The absurdity of the question made me laugh, sharp and humorless. "Because you disappeared to another country and left me with a 3-month-old baby. What did you think would happen? I thought you'd take care of him until I got back." Harper's voice rose, defensive now. "I needed time, okay? Being a mom is hard and I wasn't ready, but I'm ready now. I've grown so much as a person. I want to be in Liam's life." "Where have you been for 15 months? I asked. "Not once did you call to check on him. Not once did you send money or ask how he was doing. You didn't even leave me his medical records or tell me if he had any allergies. You just dumped him and disappeared. I told you, I was healing." "You were being selfish," I interrupted. "You made a choice to have a baby and then you made another choice to abandon him. You don't get to come back now because you found yourself and decide you want to play mommy." Harper's face flushed. "He's my son." "Where's his birth certificate?" I asked. "His immunization records? His social security number? Did you even register his birth before you left?" The guilty look that crossed her face told me everything I needed to know. She hadn't done any of it. She'd given birth to Liam, brought him home to whatever apartment she'd been living in, and within weeks had decided motherhood wasn't for her. "I want to see him," Harper demanded. "Right now, you can't stop me." "Actually, I can." I pulled out my phone, showing her the legal custody order. "This says I'm his legal guardian until further court determination. You have no rights to him right now." "That's ridiculous." Harper's voice got loud enough that I worried she'd wake Liam. "You can't steal someone's kid just because they needed a break." A break. The anger I'd been suppressing for over a year finally erupted. "You didn't take a break, Harper. You abandoned him. You left a helpless infant on a doorstep in the middle of the night like he was a package you were returning. You didn't leave money or supplies or even a proper explanation. You got on a plane and went to the other side of the world while I had to figure out how to suddenly become a mother to your child. I was struggling. We all struggle. I shouted. You know what you do when you're struggling? You ask for help. You talk to your family. You see a doctor. You don't dump your baby and flee the country. Harper took a step back, her eyes filling with tears. I made mistakes, okay? I know that, but I'm here now and I want to make things right. Please, Claire. He's my baby. Something in her voice almost made me waver. Almost. Then I remembered those first terrifying weeks, the panic attacks, the overwhelming responsibility of suddenly being solely responsible for an infant's life. I remembered calling her phone over and over while Liam screamed with an ear infection at 2 o'clock in the morning, desperate for any information about his medical history. I remembered my parents' devastation when I'd had to explain what their youngest daughter had done. No, I said firmly. You need to leave. I'll go to court, Harper threatened. I'll get a lawyer and I'll get him back. Then do that, I replied. Go through the legal system like you should have before disappearing. But right now, you need to get off my property before I call the police. Harper stared at me like she'd never seen me before. Maybe she hadn't. I'd always been the accommodating sister, the one who smoothed things over and made excuses for her behavior. That person was gone, burned away by 15 months of single parenthood forced on me against my will. I saw your Instagram, Harper said quietly. You look happy with him. Like you're his real mom. I am his real mom, I replied. I'm the one who got up with him every night. I'm the one who took him to the doctor when he was sick. I'm the one who taught him to clap and wave and say mama. You're just the person who gave birth to him. She flinched like I'd slapped her. Good. This isn't over, Harper said, backing down the porch steps. He's my son, and I'm going to get him back. I closed the door and locked it, then slid down to sit on the floor with my back against the wood. My whole body was shaking. From the bedroom, I heard Liam start to fuss, waking from his nap. I pulled myself together, wiped my eyes, and went to get him. He stood in his crib, holding onto the rail, his face lighting up when he saw me. Mama, he said, reaching for me with chubby arms. Hey, baby boy, I whispered, lifting him up and holding him close. He smelled like baby shampoo and that indefinable sweetness all toddlers have. I've got you. Mama's got you. I called Mark Jensen immediately after putting Liam in his high chair with a snack. He listened to my account of Harper's visit without interrupting, and I could hear him typing notes on his computer. This is actually good for your case, he said when I finished. She showed no real remorse, no acknowledgement of the severity of what she did. The fact that she called it needing a break demonstrates a fundamental lack of understanding about parental responsibility. She said she's going to fight for him. Let her try. Claire, you need to understand something. Family courts prioritize the best interests of the child above everything else, including biological parents' wishes. You have over a year of documented evidence showing you're Liam's primary caregiver. You have legal custody that was granted by a judge. Harper abandoned him in a way that could have resulted in criminal charges if you'd chosen to pursue them. Could I still pursue charges? I asked. Possibly. Child abandonment, child endangerment. But that's not the path I'd recommend right now. What I recommend is that we file for permanent guardianship immediately, before Harper has a chance to get her legal affairs in order. We'll request a full custody hearing where we present all your documentation and show that maintaining your guardianship is in Liam's best interest. I looked at Liam, happily smashing Cheerios into his tray and making happy babbling sounds. How long will that take? A few months, probably. Maybe longer, depending on the court schedule. In the meantime, Harper has no legal right to see him. If she shows up again, document it. If she harasses you, document that, too. Everything she does will only strengthen your case. What if she's changed? I asked quietly. What if she really does want to be his mother now? Mark was silent for a moment. That's a question you need to answer for yourself, but legally, it doesn't matter. She doesn't get to abandon a child and then come back when it's convenient for her. The law recognizes that stability and continuity of care are crucial for a child's development. Liam knows you as his mother. Disrupting that would be traumatic for him, regardless of Harper's wishes. After we hung up, I opened the binder I'd been keeping for the past 15 months. Every page represented a moment of Liam's life, a choice I'd made for his well-being, an expense I'd covered, pediatrician visits showing I'd kept him current on all his vaccinations, receipts for diapers, formula, clothes, toys, photos documenting every milestone, bank statements showing the money I'd spent on his care. I added a new document, a detailed account of Harper's visit, including direct quotes as close as I could remember them, the date and time, and my observations about her demeanor and statements. Then I texted my parents and asked them to come over. Dad arrived first with Mom pulling up minutes later. They'd been at work when I called, but both had left immediately when I said it was about Harper. I let them hold Liam while I explained what had happened. Mom cried again. She'd done a lot of crying this past year. Dad just got quiet, his jaw clenched in that way it did when he was furious but trying to control it. What are you going to do? Dad asked finally. Fight her, I said. Mark's filing for permanent guardianship. We'll go to court and a judge will decide what's best for Liam. Good, Dad said forcefully. She doesn't deserve him. She doesn't deserve to even be called his mother after what she did. Mom wiped her eyes. She's still my daughter. I love her, but I can't forgive her for this. When I think about what could have happened if you hadn't been there, she couldn't finish the sentence. I was there, I said softly, and I'm not going anywhere. Liam is my son now. Biology doesn't change that. They stayed for dinner, helping me with Liam's bedtime routine. After they left, I sat in the rocking chair in his room and watched him sleep. His room had changed so much from that first night when he'd slept in a borrowed crib pushed against my bedroom wall. Now he had a proper toddler bed, shelves full of books and toys, a nightlight that projected stars onto the ceiling. This was his home. I was his mother. Harper was a stranger who happened to share his DNA. Over the next 2 weeks, Harper tried to contact me 16 times. Phone calls I didn't answer, text messages I didn't respond to, emails I forwarded directly to Mark. She showed up at my apartment twice more, but I didn't open the door. The second time, I called the police and filed a report for harassment, adding it to my growing documentation. Her messages ranged from apologetic to angry to pleading. She sent photos of herself in Bali as if visual evidence of her healing journey would make me sympathetic. She sent articles about postpartum depression, about mothers who needed help, about the importance of second chances. She accused me of being cruel, of keeping a mother from her child, of not understanding what she'd been through. Never once did she acknowledge what she put me through. Never once did she apologize for abandoning Liam. Never once did she even ask how he was doing, what milestones he'd reached, whether he was happy and healthy. It was all about her, her pain, her struggles, her desire to be a mother now that she decided she was ready. The custody hearing was scheduled for August, 5 months after Harper's return. Mark filed our petition with a stack of documentation 6 inches thick, medical records, financial statements, character references from my friends and coworkers, sworn statements from my parents, photos of Liam at every stage of development, always with me, always clearly loved and cared for. Harper hired a lawyer, some guy named Andrew Miller, who specialized in family reunification cases. He filed a counterpetition arguing that Harper had been suffering from undiagnosed postpartum depression and had sought treatment abroad, that she was now stable and ready to resume her parental responsibilities, and that separating a child from his biological mother was harmful regardless of the circumstances. It was garbage, and Mark tore it apart. Harper's treatment consisted of yoga classes and working at a hostel, with no evidence of actual therapy or medical intervention. She'd made no attempt to contact Liam or send financial support during her absence. She'd committed an act of criminal child abandonment that I'd chosen not to prosecute. The hearing was scheduled for 3 days. I took time off work, arranged for Chloe to be on standby in case I needed support, and prepared myself for the worst. Walking into that courtroom felt surreal. Harper sat at a table with her lawyer, wearing a conservative dress I'd never seen before, looking every inch the repentant mother. I sat at my own table with Mark, my binder of documentation in front of me, and tried to keep my hands from shaking. The judge was a woman in her 50s named Judge Elaine Miller. She reviewed our filings with a neutral expression that gave away nothing about her thoughts. Andrew Miller went first, painting a picture of his client as a victim of circumstance. Your Honor, Harper Thompson was a young single mother overwhelmed by postpartum depression, a condition that affects countless women and can have devastating impacts on mental health. In her compromised state, she made the difficult decision to ensure her son's safety by leaving him with her sister, someone she trusted implicitly, to provide care. She abandoned him in the middle of the night without warning, Mark interjected. That's not ensuring safety. That's child endangerment. My client was not in a sound mental state, Walsh continued. She recognized she needed help and took steps to get it, seeking treatment abroad when resources in the United States proved insufficient. Judge Miller looked at Harper. Miss Thompson, did you seek medical treatment for postpartum depression before leaving the country? Harper hesitated just long enough for it to be damning. I didn't know that's what it was at the time. I just knew I couldn't handle being a mother. I was so overwhelmed and scared. Did you inform your sister you were leaving the baby with her permanently? The judge asked. I left a note, Harper said. I told her he was hers now. I thought that was clear. Did you make any arrangements for his care? Medical records, supplies, financial support? No. I wasn't thinking clearly. Judge Miller made a note. Continue, Mr. Miller. Miller called Harper to testify, walking her through a sob story about how hard pregnancy had been, how isolated she felt, how desperate and afraid. She cried on cue, talking about how much she'd missed Liam, how she thought about him every day, how she'd finally gotten to a place where she could be the mother he deserved. I made a terrible mistake, Harper said, looking directly at the judge. I know that, but I love my son, and I want a chance to be his mother. I'm stable now. I have a job lined up, an apartment. I've been in therapy. I'm ready. When did you start therapy? Mark asked during cross-examination. 3 weeks ago, Harper admitted. And before that, during your 15 months in Bali? I did yoga and meditation. That's a form of therapy. Did you see a licensed mental health professional? No. Did you seek medical treatment for postpartum depression? No. Did you take any medication or receive any formal diagnosis? No. But I know that's what it was. Mark pulled out his own stack of documents. Your Honor, I'd like to submit evidence showing Harper Thompson's social media activity during her time in Bali. As he projected her Instagram feed on the courtroom screen, Harper's face went red. Photos of her at full moon parties, on boats, at clubs. Captions about finding herself, living her best life, being free. Did you ever post about your son? Mark asked. No. Did you attempt to contact him? No. Did you send money for his care? I didn't have much money. You had enough to travel for 15 months. Mark turned to the judge. Your Honor, this is not a case of a mother in crisis making a difficult but necessary decision. This is a case of child abandonment, pure and simple. Harper Thompson made a choice to prioritize her own desires over her child's needs. And now that she's decided motherhood might be appealing again, she wants to waltz back into his life. Then it was my turn to testify. Mark walked me through Liam's arrival, those first terrifying weeks, the process of becoming his guardian. I talked about the sleepless nights, the learning curve, the way I'd had to restructure my entire life around this child I hadn't planned for. "Do you love Liam?" Mark asked. "More than anything," I said, and I felt tears building. "He's my son, not because I gave birth to him, but because I chose him every single day. I chose to stay when things got hard. I chose to sacrifice my savings and my free time and my sleep. I chose to be his mother when Harper chose not to be." Andrew Miller tried to make me seem vindictive during his cross-examination, suggesting I was keeping Liam from his mother out of spite. But every question he asked, I had documentation to refute. "You didn't try very hard to find Harper, did you?" he asked. "I hired a private investigator within 2 weeks of her disappearance," I replied. "He tracked her to Bali within 5 days." I presented his full report. "But you didn't reach out to her once you knew where she was." "She'd made it clear she didn't want to be found. She disconnected her phone, deactivated her social media, and left the country. I respected her stated wishes, and focused on caring for her abandoned child." "Isn't it true that you posted photos of Liam on social media to provoke Harper?" "I posted photos of my son on my private Instagram account that has 53 followers, all close friends and family. I didn't tag Harper because she'd deactivated her accounts. I had no way of knowing she'd reactivated one and was monitoring my posts." My parents testified about the devastation Harper's abandonment had caused, about watching me step into the role of mother while their daughter partied in Bali. Chloe testified about the state I'd been in those first few weeks, about the transformation she'd witnessed as I'd bonded with Liam. But the most powerful testimony came from Dr. Susan Chin, Liam's pediatrician. Mark had subpoenaed her records, and she appeared in court with 15 months of documentation. "Liam is a healthy, well-adjusted child," Dr. Chin stated. "His mother has brought him to every scheduled appointment, kept him current on vaccinations, sought immediate care when he was ill. She's attentive, informed, and clearly bonded with her son. From a medical perspective, he's thriving." "You refer to Miss Thompson as the mother," Miller noted. "But biologically, Harper is Liam's mother." "I refer to the person who mothers him as his mother," Dr. Chin replied coolly. "Biology and motherhood are not always synonymous. This child knows Claire as his mother. She's the one he reaches for when he's hurt, the one he calls for when he's scared. Disrupting that attachment would be psychologically harmful." Walsh called his own expert a psychologist who testified about the importance of biological connections and the trauma of maternal separation. But Mark countered with research about attachment theory, about how children bond with their primary caregivers regardless of biological relationship, about the damage caused by unstable living situations. On the third day, Judge Miller called both me and Harper to approach the bench together. We stood side by side, not looking at each other, while the judge studied us both. "This is a tragic situation," Judge Miller said. "Miss Thompson, you made a series of choices that have led us here. You chose to abandon your child. You chose to leave the country rather than seek help locally. You chose not to maintain contact or provide support. Those choices have consequences." Harper started to cry. "I know I made mistakes, but I love him." "Doesn't that count for something?" "Love isn't enough when it's inconsistent," the judge replied. "A child needs stability. Liam has had that stability with his aunt for 15 months. Miss Thompson has demonstrated commitment, responsibility, and genuine care for this child. She's documented every aspect of his care, spent thousands of dollars on his needs, rearranged her entire life to accommodate him." The judge turned to me. "Miss Thompson, what do you want as the outcome here?" "I want to keep Liam," I said, my voice steady despite my pounding heart. "I want to be his legal mother. Not temporarily, not as a guardian, but permanently. I want to adopt him and give him stability and security and a life where he doesn't have to worry about being abandoned again." "He won't be abandoned," Harper protested. "I'm here now. I'm ready." "You are ready to leave," I shot back. "What happens when things get hard again? When being a mother isn't Instagram-worthy? When he's sick or difficult or disrupts your life? Will you take off again or will you stick around this time?" Harper had no answer. Judge Miller returned to her bench and spent a long minute reviewing her notes. The courtroom was silent except for Harper's quiet crying. "I'm issuing my ruling," the judge finally said. "Based on the evidence presented, I'm terminating Harper Thompson's parental rights and granting full permanent guardianship to Claire Thompson with the option to pursue adoption if she chooses." Harper's sob was audible throughout the courtroom. Her lawyer put a hand on her shoulder, but she shrugged him off. "Ms. Thompson, you had 15 months to demonstrate you were capable of being a parent," Judge Miller continued. "Instead, you demonstrated the opposite. You abandoned your child in a way that could have resulted in his death if your sister hadn't been there. You provided no care, no support, no contact. You chose yourself over your son repeatedly. The court cannot and will not place a child back into that situation regardless of your current claims of readiness." "He's my baby," Harper whispered. "No," the judge said firmly. "He's Miss Thompson's son. She's earned that title. You forfeited it." The gavel came down, and it was over. Mark pulled me into a hug while I tried to process what had just happened. Across the courtroom, Harper was sobbing into her hands while Andrew Miller packed up his briefcase with a defeated air of someone who had known he would lose. My parents were in the gallery, and Mom was crying again, but this time with relief. Dad gave me a thumbs up, his eyes wet. "It's done," Mark said. "He's yours. Really yours now." I nodded, unable to speak past the lump in my throat. Harper tried to approach me as I was leaving the courtroom, but a bailiff stepped between us. "No contact," he said firmly, and she backed away. But she looked at me one last time, her face blotchy and devastated. "I really did love him," she said. "Not enough," I replied, and I walked away. The adoption process took another 3 months, but it was straightforward with Harper's parental rights terminated. On a Thursday afternoon in November, I stood in front of a different judge and officially became Liam's mother in every legal sense. He was almost 2 years old by then, talking in short sentences and running everywhere instead of walking. When the judge asked if I understood the permanent nature of adoption, I looked down at my son and said yes with absolute certainty. Harper moved to Arizona shortly after the custody hearing. I heard through the family grapevine that she'd started dating someone new, that she was bartending again, that she told people she'd given her baby up for adoption because she wanted him to have a better life. She never mentioned that she'd abandoned him on a doorstep in the middle of the night. She never mentioned the years she'd spent overseas while I raised her child. She never mentioned that she'd tried to get him back and lost in court. But I had all of that documented, every piece of it, in a binder that I kept in a safe in my closet. Someday, when Liam was old enough to ask questions about where he came from, I'd show him. I'd tell him the truth about his biological mother, about how he came to be mine, about the year that changed both our lives. For now, though, he was just my son, my toddler, who loved dinosaurs and refused to eat anything green, who gave sloppy kisses and giggled at terrible jokes, who called me mama and fell asleep on my chest during movie nights. People ask me sometimes if I'm angry at Harper for what she did. The answer is complicated. I'm angry at how she abandoned Liam, at the trauma she caused, at her selfishness and lack of accountability. But I'm also aware that if she hadn't left him on my doorstep that March night, I wouldn't have my son. My life would be completely different, and I can't imagine it without him anymore. So maybe, in some twisted way, Harper gave me the greatest gift I never knew I wanted. She gave me Liam. She just didn't mean to. What do you think about how she tried to rewrite her story?